Hey, we're Attention Trading, a full-service digital marketing agency that helps small and mid-sized businesses with their strategic marketing efforts. From websites, design, social media, and ads, our goal is to create marketing alignment for our clients. You may not realize it, but the majority of businesses lack a solid marketing strategy and plan. That's where we come in. On this show, we talk with business owners, founders, and marketers to uncover the secrets of their success when it comes to starting and scaling a business. This is the Attention Trading Podcast. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Attention Trading Podcast, where we talk with CEOs, owners, founders, and marketers about how they grow, scale, and operate their business. My name is Max Lowy, and I'm here with my co-founder of Attention Trading, Steve Alves. Today, we're thrilled to have Jenna Gaudio with us. Jenna is the co-president of Vydia, a cutting-edge media technology company providing essential services to media and music businesses worldwide. At Vydia, Jenna oversees strategic initiatives, operations, really helping to drive the company's mission to empowering content creators all over. In addition to her role at Vydia, Jenna is the executive director for the Jersey Shore Women in Tech, where she actively promotes the growth and advancement of women in the tech industry. We can't wait to hear more. Jenna, welcome to the Attention Trading Podcast.
Thanks so much, Max. What a great intro.
I try. I do a little bit of homework to make sure it's right. But yeah, no, Jenna, we're super excited to have you here. I think you have a super unique background, and I'd love for our listeners to learn a little bit more about you, about what you do, and kind of your day to day. So, in your own words, who are you?
That is a big question to unpack. I would say from a career standpoint, I always love to start at the beginning, which is I entered the workforce in one of the most chaotic recessions that ever existed. And so what I wanted to do with my life was a question mark. And really at that time when there was no jobs, because it was like the 2009 nightmare, you kind of would take whatever you could get. And so I was bartending at the time and then got into operations via Fort Monmouth, moving down to Maryland. And I got to see how project management worked. I got to work with a lot of subject matter experts, and I got to spend a lot of time understanding the nuts and bolts of how to go from zero to successful. And so that job was temporary. And that's how I got it, because, you took whatever you could get. And I did that job so well that they ended up offering me a job in Maryland, working for the government, Department of Defense, electronic warfare, which was really cool. But when you're in the beginning of your career, figuring out and planning out the rest of your life in the government isn't typically what I saw for myself. And so I wanted to get into tech startups. And the way that I got my foot in the door was marketing. I looked into New Jersey tech startups that were in the early stages and needed to grow their company, needed to get organized, needed to go from being that bright-eyed, optimistic company full of potential to being something that was organized in a powerhouse. And that was something that I had learned. So I took that skill set and I started pitching myself as someone that could drive that growth via marketing and brand. And so that's how I got my foot in the door at a Jersey Shore tech company called Yashi. And then I helped grow that company, and it ended up getting acquired. And in that process, I met my current boss, who started another New Jersey tech company, and started as the head of marketing. And since then, I've been taking on different roles ever since.
That's awesome. Well, one, thank you for sharing the little background there. As far as like wanting to go into like a tech startup specifically, was there a reason for that? Was there something that, you're just really passionate about, that the startup world or the tech world? Like, what made you decide like that's what you wanted to focus on?
I have always loved technology, and I think part of that probably has to do with my dad. We didn't have a ton growing up. Like, it wasn't like we had anything that we wanted, or, even a pack of gum was like a luxury. But the one thing my dad always got us excited about was, getting the new Apple product, that Apple computer, and unboxing it and using it as a family and understanding why it was new. And there was just something so exciting about that. And so from an early age, I've been an Apple girl. And just learning what that meant and how they present their products and how they get people excited about it and why people are excited about it, and then delivering on that promise so that you become a committed loyal fan of that product. And there's just something about that that felt warm and cozy and kind of taken care of. And I like that feeling. I like giving that feeling to other people and growing teams that are built on that feeling.
So given that you had said that you kind of entered the workforce in the 20 aughts, right? The 2008, 2009 era, and the fact that your dad's an Apple person, and given that I'm very big an Apple person, you must have had the fully colored CRT, like big box Apple computers that had like the color
Absolutely.
backing on them that were clear.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll do you one
Yep.
step better. When I went to Monmouth University, they had regular computer labs, but there was one uh, Apple lab in the communications building, which was what I was majoring in actually. And I took a part-time job as the only person that was like managing the Apple computer lab. And I was shocked to see how many people didn't really know how to use it because they're just so used to using
So different.
Microsoft in academia. So that was also an interesting thing. But yeah, I have always been that person when I love something, I love it deep, and I will talk to anyone about it and try to get them to understand, why it's such an amazing product.
That's awesome. I call
Love it.
Steve a, an Apple girl too, so that makes
Welcome to
sense.
the club.
Yeah, yeah.
Good place to be.
Samesies.
So I love that I definitely want to talk about your current role, right? But I love, as a marketing agency, we love talking about marketing, and that's kind of where you started your career as well. And so we've worked with a few startups on their marketing specifically, and obviously those budgets kind of fluctuate. Have you had success, or like what has that been like for you going into the startup world, really managing building out campaigns with either big budgets because they're well funded startups, or it's bootstrapping and getting really scrappy and creative to create something special? Like what has that experience been for you?
I think that there are so many different kinds of marketers, and I think that they are appropriate at different times and different places based on need. And so it took me a while to work at several companies that were high growth to see where I was really the most valuable and at what points there was someone else with a different skill set that was more valuable. And I think that that is the most important thing for marketers to understand what they're bringing to the table, how to fill their gaps when they're building a team, and when to put someone else in charge that's more believable in something than you are. And so, again, if you kind of look at my background, I'm really good at representing and cheerleading and organizing and getting to the core of who we are and what we do and why we do it. And so that is like very much early stage grassroots kind of marketing. And that is where I think I function the best. I come in when people and brands don't know who they are, they don't know how to organize themselves, they haven't gotten credit for the amazing things that they're doing, and they need that recognition that's going to help them get talent, funding, credibility in their industry, and pride around building a product that people can take home and tell their friends and family to also use because they love it that much. That for me is the core part of what my marketing is, and that has always been the jump off point for me. It's really about building advocates. I remember when I worked at a big corporation, there was a someone that with the role chief evangelist officer, and I was like, that is the job that I want someday. Like in my 20s, I was like, one day I'm going to be a chief evangelist officer. And truly, I think that that's kind of what I have been for early startups and founders. Is nobody believes in it more than me, and I think that's kind of where I excel through the years. And so going back to budget, so when you first start out in marketing, you're going to do the basics that are free. You're going to do social media. You're going to become a really good writer about the things that you're good at. You're going to go to local events. Then you're going to go to regional events. Then you're going to go to nationwide events. And you're going to show up strong there and find a way to make your dollar really stretch. Awards, most awards are very cheap if not free, and that's how we kind of got best places to work early on that helped us attract talent. We got Inc. 500 to show that we were fast growing, Deloitte Fast 500. Entrepreneur had a most entrepreneurial company, we got that. The Asbury Park Press gave us most innovative. The New Jersey Tech Council gave us most likely to succeed, all in my first year of working at Vydia, which is where I work now. So that is the kind of marketer that I like to be, loud and proud. As we grew and we got funding and we got the ability to run more high level campaigns. You do things and test things like, ads, which has changed a lot, and, SEO, which has changed a lot. And I outsourced those kinds of things because I wasn't as strong in them. That wasn't particular my niche. But now, the thing that we realize, especially working in music, is building communities is the most important thing. Having a brand that people are proud to be associated with is the most important thing. So we have a creative director, formerly, head of marketing, who is just oozing creativity and culture and understanding what makes people come together to celebrate things that they love around music and genres and technology. And so we host a lot of curated events. We showcase a lot of our artists. We do a lot of events where people can show up and collaborate on things. And those have bigger budgets. If you are hosting a party at a beautiful venue with city views and drinks and food, that is not an application to apply for Inc. 500, And so I think you have to evaluate what you can do with what you have and make it work at any level. But there's also things you can do to make that better. Like once you're that big and people want to be associated with you, can you get sponsorships? Who else is interested in working with you? How do you offset those costs? So at the core of it, you're a problem solver. What is the problem? What are the resources you have? And solve it within your means.
I feel like you just described Max as well. in this partnership duo, that's Max.
You hit a lot of the things that we do. Yeah, no, it's funny because when we're talking to a lot of different people on this podcast, and a few of the marketers so far, it has been very community focused, right? Especially in the past 12 to 18 months, how are we building out our community for our brand? I think though one thing that's interesting that you kind of went into was the fact that it's more about positioning. You've figured out how to position yourself as a marketer or a leader to position the brand properly to maybe win some of these awards too. And I think if you can think that way, and also do that for the brands, it's you've already done it for yourself. You figured out how to market yourself properly, to market the brands properly.
Absolutely.
So it's an easy thing to think about, but it's a really hard thing to actually understand and know how to do it properly, if that makes sense.
Especially if you're running a business. That's why I love working with visionary founders, because their brains work a mile a minute and they have such charisma, but the execution on things seem a little bit fuzzy because they're just so inundated with good ideas and opportunities, in front of them. And for me, it's like apple picking. I'm like, this is a good one. I can do, this is a good one. And then I get to, be the person that takes the ideas and colors them in and brings them to a team of talented people and is like, okay, this is the vision, here's how we do it. Let's divide and conquer. And then we get there. And then you just keep doing that on larger and larger scales and make sure that your outcomes are high level and appreciated and acknowledged.
Yeah, that's awesome. As far as your current role, right? Co-president, I don't typically see co-president. What's that about?
Yeah, no, from head of marketing, which I came in, director of marketing, back in 2016, I wanted to go to market, but the product had some good concepts, but it wasn't user friendly enough. And so who better to help make it user friendly than somebody that is going to probably use it. And so I started working with the technology team, building the product to get it ready for showcasing at a place like South by Southwest. I'm not going to demo or hand the product to somebody if it doesn't work in a way that they're like, oh, this is like an Apple product. I love it, So I started working with them more and more. And the founder one day was just like, we need somebody to be in charge of product management. And I was like, but I'm in charge of marketing, And he was like, yes, but we need somebody in charge of product management. And I was like, okay. So I was half doing the job, but I got a ton of, insights and research and training on it, brought back this idea of going agile to the team and working in a more organized fashion with a more strategic approach. And the team really embraced it. They're super smart. They're super talented. They just needed support, and I was able to be that support and help them scale the way that they were operating and building the product. And so the product became super complex and robust, but very user-friendly in design. And so that helped us be really successful in product. And so from there, we continued to grow. And at that point, we needed to manage the people, because if you're not taking care of your people, you're not taking care of your brand or your product. So I became in charge of people, product, and marketing. And then that put me as an SVP of operations. Going into COVID, now I have to do, all sorts of COVID management and, handling things at a very high level. So I became the chief operating officer. So overseeing all those functions, overseeing, the executive KPIs, helping the CEO steer us through, a difficult transition through COVID, being completely co-located to remote. We went through a ton of things. And at the same time, we were on a roadshow for a potential acquisition. And so that is like 3-4 full-time jobs right there. So luckily I was remote during a pandemic, so I had a lot of time to invest in it. And so coming out the other side, Vydia was acquired. I think it was announced in February 2023. And so it was acquired by a company that was recently started by a former Apple Music executive. And the idea was to join forces, LA-based creative ideas company from, deep into the music industry with technology and services built on the East Coast in New Jersey. And so we were acquired. And so they're going to start a new company, which we all know, if anyone's worked at a startup, takes a lot of strategic effort and building of a team on that level at the parent, but also we're a 100-person company at Vydia, so someone has to run the subsidiary. And so while they were forming a C-suite at the parent company, and the founder of Vydia became part of the C-suite at the parent company, they needed somebody that the team trusted, that understood the product, understood, how we operate. And so myself and my co-founder were promoted to oversee the subsidiary. So I oversee the technology services, operations, people side of the business and marketing. And my co-president, he comes from working with the clients in label and artist relations, label services, client success, content rights, like everything that's very music industry, like industry focused. And so we kind of divide and conquer, and we are very much like a yin and yang that's able to share perspectives and have like more of a holistic approach to, running Vydia as a whole.
It's awesome. That's great.
So much.
So much. I love it. I do. I think the thing that I've always loved is getting to dabble in everything. Everyone's like, what's your typical day like? It's like, there has never once been a typical day.
It's funny because I usually ask that, like, what's, as a co-president, what is your day-to-day look like? But yeah, I mean, you're doing a little bit of everything, and
mayhem.
You don't have a typical.
I think that goes into hiring really talented people and putting them in the right roles. So, I would say that I'm probably one of the best, if not the best, at organization and communication in the company, but I need someone that is very strong and visionary and creative, right? And so I have somebody that's overseeing creative direction and marketing, having somebody that is passionate and understands, stays up to date on compliance to run our people operations and HR functions, having somebody that is really analytical and really good at assessing what is going to be the most valuable for us, and really being a strong leader in product management now, having someone in that role, which we do. I think having people you can trust. And then on the other side of the company, obviously people that can run entire label and artist relations team and kind of have, potential deals move through the pipeline and support these releases and understand what makes a release successful in the music industry. Like having somebody that are really good at those things, run point on that, and having a strong organization is really helpful. So my job and my co-president's job is most of the time, you're working on a strategy, but you're also constantly reprioritizing your day for anybody that might need support, whether it is capitalizing on an opportunity that came up or closing a deal or dealing with an emergency or anything like that. You have to be constantly changing up your time to say, how can I be most valuable to my team and the company today?
So I have a kind of a follow-up question to the, part technology, part your day-to-day, kind of coalesce in those two things. Like, I think all of us especially people who work from home, we have a a solidified tech stack that we constantly rely on to do all of our things. And given that you're doing 4 jobs at the exact same time, what tech stack are you using? And when I mean like what kind of apps are you using? What kind of services are you doing? Are you ultimately leveraging? Like what does that look like for you in terms of your day-to-day stuffs?
Uh,
Slack, Outlook,
yeah, I love
whatever that is.
I love Slack. Slack is one of the most interesting technologies you can use to organize communications. Obviously, I think it's kind of like social media. There's a right way to use it and there's a wrong way to use it. And so you kind of have to put guidelines around it. But I love it because you can organize different project conversations. You can organize like culture channels, right? So when we went remote during COVID, that was really hard for me, especially. I know everyone has a different opinion on it, but I think for companies, it was hard if you were completely co-located to then change the culture to remote. Because we were all in one room. When you had a meeting, you got to get into a room and close your laptops and talk to another human being and react to the way that they were laughing or stressed or whatever. And you could have that kind of engagement. And it's not the same way when you're off camera and like trying to unmute and the technology is cutting you out so that you can't banter. I think a lot of that was tough. And so, and bigger than that, like depending on your personality, like it's hard. Like I have a very direct, assertive personality, especially when it comes to getting things done. And so when I Slack people about something that needs to get done, I'm very to the point for the most part. And it comes off, we'll call it assertive, and people, ingest that in a way that make them wonder what else I mean by that or what else I'm thinking or feeling. But when I go to the office, because we're kind of hybrid. So when I go to the office, whether it's East Coast or the West Coast, and people see me in person, like, hey, how's it going? Like, what have you done fun lately? Like, that's awesome. Like, I love doing that too. And, whatever else. And thanks for working on that project. It came out really great. And then, people will usually circle back that are new with me and be like, you're not how I thought you were based on your Slack messages. And so I think it's really important to figure out these are spaces for communicating. These are spaces for communicating like the projects, the work that has to get done. These are spaces for us to have culture. And so we have so many channels around plants, around books, around run clubs, around pets working from home. We just have a channel just for positivity. Like if something that made you happy today, like put it in there because we all want to be happy too. We have a channel for just like random thoughts or articles that you read. And I think, being able to have both of those worlds together inside Slack are really neat. And then obviously you've got the automation factor, right? Like AI is coming in huge, and it's like, how do you incorporate all the different workflows in the company into a place where everyone is communicating in a way that is effective? And I think that is powerful. I think the goal, just like the technology that we build, is how do you build a seamless experience and integrate all the parts of your life so that you have more of a control center rather than having to triage in multiple different places and try to keep everything functioning. Like Slack is definitely one of my favorite tech stacks. We use a variety of like project planning. Different teams use things like Trello, Asana, Jira. I think you need to have one. I don't really have a personal preference on which one you use. In my personal life, I've really been into Notion because it just kind of has more of an aesthetic appeal to organizing, how things are organized in databases, how you can kind of move projects along in statuses, just different kinds of ways to organize information. But I think that getting organized is one of the most important things. In sales, we use HubSpot. In marketing, we use HubSpot. I think that those are kind of like pillars that every company should have. And it doesn't really matter which one you have. It's just that you have something that is your one source of truth for your teams and your company.
For sure. And then I think one of the reasons why we always ask that question is because there's always this general culprits that are in that list of things, right? There always is the Slacks. There's always the Jiras and the Asanas and stuff like that. We're always looking for like that one thing that someone using that we've never heard about. And we've come across that in a couple of instances and we're like, wow, that's super random, especially with our clients. And then we see that and we're like, why are you using this versus using something like a HubSpot that can do 5 of the things? And by the way, HubSpot's not sponsoring this yet. Want to put that out there. But like, it's always interesting to see how people are doing that because, everybody is remote, especially a lot of companies we work with. Like Max is in New Jersey, I'm in Connecticut. And so to ask those kind of questions, we're looking for some like insights to how people do their things every single day that ultimately, bring up our acumen in terms of technology, and then also spread that to our clients as well. So thank you for sharing. Appreciate that.
And I think you can bootstrap in the beginning. Like I didn't use HubSpot when we had no money, like I used an early startup alternative. And then once we had money and we had scaled to a point where we needed a bigger CRM that could scale, then we transitioned to HubSpot, then we transitioned to NetSuite, like we did not use these big SaaS products until we got to that point. And so just the same way that you use QuickBooks early on, you have to kind of grow and transition. And I think a big part of it is figuring out what that investment is, because transitioning requires effort. And so really kind of thinking about and mapping out at what point it would be worth it to invest it and be sure about the one that you're investing in, because you don't want to do that 4 or 5 times. You want to do that once, maybe twice.
Yeah, we've been part of
seen all over the place
transitions and consulting on those. And but yeah, we're in the same boat. It's interesting because a lot of our clients, they're small to medium size, and some of them either have some basic, like very basic, it was built for them CRM that there's no integrations, or they don't even have one. And so we're coming to the table with our suggestions, and a lot of times we love HubSpot. It works great. Salesforce
wicked
is
expensive.
Out of, yeah, but again, it could get pricey depending on what the client's needs are, right? And you even mentioned NetSuite, like that's a whole nother, right? And so, but it works, and it works well for what it's needed. And so I think for us, when we always go into these conversations, it's always like, hey, we want to understand like what the goals are so we can help put the right things, the right tools in the right place for you. So it's always interesting to see, from a company your size, like what you guys are using, how you're utilizing it. And it's always interesting for us. I'd love to shift over a little bit to your role for Jersey Shore Women in Tech. And I know you guys just had an event like last week, and I unfortunately was not able to make it because I caught a summer cold, but it was on my calendar.
We'll have another one. We'll see you at the next one.
All right, good. Because I was super disappointed. I was like, I've never been to one of their events. I'd love to go. But yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. I mean, I think it makes sense for what you do on a regular basis, but like, tell us more about that.
I think it's super important. I mean, especially from my perspective, because a lot of people are like, oh, are you one of the founders? And no, there are 2 girls that founded it, Allison and Brittany, who I work with at Vydia. And so there is a really popular group in the Asbury Park area called Jersey Shore Tech. And it is mostly comprised of these like brilliantly curious men that are so interested in like bleeding edge technology and engineering. And I talk about other things too, but for the most part, if you're going to pop in, you can find yourself like deep in the weeds of whatever the like latest bleeding tech is. And I'm interested in those kinds of things. I definitely am, but there's not really anyone that looks like me in those meetings. And so some people like Brittany and Allison don't care, and they just go no matter what, and they'll be the only 1 or 2 women in the room and not think anything of it. Brittany is an engineer and an engineering manager now, and Allison is a product manager. So they are used to working in tech. They're used to being in teams that, they are the minority. And so that is commonplace for them. Coming from marketing, which is predominantly, female dominated, I wasn't always used to somebody in like my particular niche, being so far from somebody that I identify with. Sure, like my teams have always been primarily men, but my function specifically, I would usually be working with at least 1 other woman. And so I rarely went, but they had asked me to speak one time because of, my career and what I work on. And, I did that. And even then I just had all this imposter syndrome of like, why would these people want to listen to me? Like, what do I have to offer? Like, this is so scary. Like, this is a one-time deal. But based off of this kind of like mentality, Brittany and Allison had the ability to kind of recognize that there wasn't a place for women to go and have a community around technology. Maybe they do, the 2 of them, but like people like me would avoid it because we just didn't feel like it was for us. Not saying that that's right, but like that's just the feeling. And so they started it after going to I think it was like a 1-day conference for women in tech. I think it was at Bellworks. And after that, they were like, we should start it. We should start this meetup. And so they approached me to be a speaker at the very first Jersey Shore Women in Tech. And I, was elated. I was excited. I was like, oh, this is my crowd, like I can help this demographic. they get me, I get them. And so the first time that they had a speaker, it was really popular. There was like 60 people that showed up, which was way more than we thought. And it just felt so helpful to have people bring their problems and share ideas and share solutions and opportunities and just all these things that already existed, I think, for many male networks. But not really for women. And so we had men show up. The whole thought was like, show up to support women in tech. You don't have to be a woman in tech. You just have to be willing to support women in tech. And so that like opened up like a new thought process. And then it opened up a conversation between Jersey Shore Women Tech and Jersey Shore Tech. And so actually the event that we had last week was a blend of both. And so that was really cool for me to see and attend because, it's been 5 or 6 years, I think. And so to see that kind of bridge being built in the local tech community was a really beautiful thing. And since then, I've just continued to kind of join other groups. There's I love Executive Women in Product is I think a global community. Women in Music is like a really popular community. I don't know about you, but I have joined like all these different like marketing groups on Facebook where people are just like, how are you guys dealing with cookies? How are you dealing with the SEO changes? Like, what are we doing about it? And just like hearing what people are concerned about or problems they're having, and then solutions that people have done. And it's just such a learning experience to just, sit on the sidelines and listen to how people solve problems.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that we're doing more of joining some of these groups. One question I have for you, and we typically ask a lot of our guests is, as far as like, like your role as a leader, and I don't want to assume, but have you mentored others, specifically women in the industry, and or do you have a mentor? Do you have a support group of professionals, women, or not even professionals, just like a support group that you rely on that has been beneficial to you and your professional and personal growth? Like, is that something that you dabble in, or do you find support elsewhere?
I think that's something everybody needs. And I think it's important that people recognize it and are looking for it and are open to it all the time, because it's generally a two-way street, no matter which side of it you're on, right? I do a ton of mentoring for like the Monmouth University committee or community. I think that a lot of people helped me. My professors told me stories about how that they succeeded in the real world and how that translates to what they're teaching us in school. I followed them around after class to just continue to understand what the world looked like when they were building their careers. And so that was kind of like the beginning of me looking to other people and their career trajectories. I then graduated into a world where at work, I was always looking around to see what other people's roles were and how they did it and what they had to do in order to get that knowledge. I would say that my first New Jersey startup, Yashi, was founded by a married couple, Jay and Caitlin Gould. And so that was really influential on me. One, because he let me have a window seat right next to him, building the company, being like the strategic operator and businessman. He had some success previously, so this wasn't his first rodeo. And so I got to learn how he thinks and like who his advisors are and what he was willing to risk and what he wasn't willing to risk, and kind of know what those bounds are. And then I also got to be mentored by his wife, who had a complementary skill set to him. She was incredible at sales and client success and managing the emotional safety of the team and things like that. And I understood that it was important to have complementary skill sets in a winning team and to understand how they framework problems differently and sometimes the same. And so I think both of them were really important mentors to me, and now the founder of my current company, obviously he has been very candid with me on my growth, and I've been candid with him. And I think that has made us so much better. And if we didn't have the relationship where we're willing to say, hey, this is a thing that's going to get in your way, and you have to learn to figure it out. And I think that is like hugely impactful mentorship. There's also been women that have reached out and have, said like, here are the things that, you should think about, consider, be on the lookout. And, I have done the same. But I think the biggest thing is women, for the most part, are going to have to peer mentor each other because there just aren't that many this high up that are accessible. They are immersed in these pools of very powerful, successful men. So those have to be usually your primary mentors. But you should always be looking to mentor each other, because it's going back to those networks. Why Juries for Women in Tech is so popular and so important is because it's access to information. Like, I don't know what it's like to be a female CEO. I've never been one. I'm a co-president, but like, if I ever even wanted to do that, I mean, take co-president, for instance, everyone was like, oh, are you going to run the company? And I was like, I don't think so, because I never really thought that was something that I'd be considered for, even though I was fully competent in doing it. But I think the part is, it's important for representation, but it's also important for access of information of what are the things you're going to be up against as a woman in leadership, as a woman running this company, as a woman doing all these things. And so, I make sure that I help women that are on the coming up in their careers. And I also take mentorship from those women because they know things that I don't know. They're experiencing things that I haven't experienced. I think that's why it's important to kind of think about learning from everyone, from the intern who's going to teach you what, being brat is, and versus, somebody that is going to say, all right, here's how you manage a budget and here's how you prepare for an acquisition, which are things that you're never going to know when you first start out in your career,
Yeah. I always say, like, you don't know what you don't know. And so I think having those conversations, those candid conversations, or if you're able to, if you've created that culture and that workplace to do so, like, it's super important. And I think it can definitely help, not only yourself, but also your team and where they're looking to grow and excel in their life. Was there any kind of specific experience, within your career that you felt transformative? You talked about, imposter syndrome, right? Like, a little bit, like, and I think everyone has that a little, from time to time, but like, was there anything that like sticks out in your mind where you're just like, I got this. I know what I can do. I know what I'm really good at. And this is why I do it.
Yeah, I think it was when we were getting ready to be acquired. I had taken on and I had built many of the departments in the company and then handed them off to people that are better than me at them. So I had an understanding of how they all work because I helped build the fundamentals. I also had matured as a leader. I had learned some hard lessons. I've had a ton of hard conversations, and I had grown from those conversations. And I knew where we were headed. I knew what it was going to take from everybody as far as endurance, as far as travel, as far as, being able to build successful pillars for the company to continue to move up on. And I think one of the best phrases that I had come across was like, intensity impresses, but consistency wins. And so I love being an intense person. I love being, the person that comes in and makes sure the problem gets solved, and it'd be very intense in any kind of situation, whether it commanded it or not. And so I think the biggest thing that I learned is that it's more important to be consistent and be the problem solver, come with solutions, and really save the intensity for when it was really warranted. And so a lot of that helped change people's perspective of me and my execution strategy. And so I think I had really come into a place where I no longer was waiting for people to tell me what needed to be done and tell me what I was good at and how I could be of value. And I was ready to then be able to, I knew my value, I knew what I could bring to the table, and I was ready to just, change it into the top gear. And I remember sitting down with the CEO founder and saying, I have done all these jobs for this company. I've built all these departments. I've won the trust of all the employees. I've learned a ton, and I think I've been a good partner to you. You're going to be on the road all the time pitching the company. Somebody needs to help be there as a rock and a resource for the operational team here. And I think I should be your COO to you being the CEO. And, I was ready for war. I was ready to be, you read all these books, you see all these videos, you have to defend yourself, all these different things. And, you're going to get no and all this stuff. And he pretty much was like, I've already approved it with the board. And it was like the most aha moment of my life that like not everything has to be a fight. You know, you have to work really hard. You have to have an understanding, but if you're working in the right environment for the right person and you're doing the work and you're competent, there is a good chance that like you will get that opportunity, but you will also likely have to ask for it in order to be deserving of it. And so I think that that was like a big understanding for me, that it takes so many layers of growth and strategy and understanding and self-valuing in order to get to a place where you are going to be the best leader for the team. Because if I didn't value myself, how could I teach the other leaders of the company to value themselves and to believe their instincts and to know how to ask for things that they needed in order to operate at the highest possible level. And so I think that that was something that I think really, really changed me. But like people say, like success isn't overnight. Like it took a decade to get to that kind of moment,
Yeah,
I
that's
think
awesome.
that takes a lot of grit and consistency,
Absolutely.
kind of what you're referring to at the beginning. Yeah.
Grit and tenacity is what I usually
Yeah.
usually get called.
That's a fair point. And I think that's lost on a lot of people these days, is that, a lot of individuals want the thing automatically, especially because of social media. Like it's such gratifying. It's such a quick, hit of dopamine that they don't have enough grit to be like, hey, it's going to take you literally a decade to get here. And you have to do it every single day without complaining and do the best you absolutely can, but also not be too hard on yourself, because it is a decade worth of time to be able to do the things. Which kind of leads us into two of our last questions, of which, the first one has to do about self-education. Uh, Big believer in that. Read a lot, blogs, books, what have you, audiobooks. I'm reading 3 audiobooks at the exact same time. For you personally, it seems like your edification is widespread and it's from several different sources. But is there a certain list of things you do on a regular basis? Are you an avid reader? Are you an avid researcher? Like what is your go-to for expanding your knowledge and your acumen in this space?
Yeah, love the question. 100% going to answer that. I just want to go back a second to, what you were saying about like being able to grow. Like there are also things that I think you need to consider in your career, like analyzing what you really want and like how hard it's going to be, right? Like I put in a decade of work and it got me to where I am, but there was a point early in my career I wanted to be in film. I wanted to be an editor. I wanted to do all these things in production. And I had an intern job that converted to a freelance job in New York City, that I would get called while I was behind the bar at TGI Fridays to come to the city and do this interview, do, a sports segment, do whatever, like what I thought was my dream. But a lot of the times the job was, working in reality TV, which was not my dream. I wanted to educate, I wanted to enlighten. And the hours were long, the pay was bad, and, it wasn't consistent. I didn't have benefits of any kind. And the path and road to growth did not guarantee me, a survivable paycheck, benefits for my health. And, it wasn't an environment that was really sustainable for someone that looked like me. And I would have to be the 1%, even if I was the best. And honestly, it made me not love it as much anymore. And Instagram stories like came out, shortly after that. And I was like, oh, I can just make videos and edit them and publish them whenever I want. This can be my hobby. Like, what am I going to do for my career? And so it's important to also be real with yourself and say, you're not going to become, a senior executive in something that doesn't yield you a path with, and that's something I think you really have to understand too. In order to get to a place where you put 10 years in and be successful. If I put 10 years into taking freelance jobs in New York City, I don't even know that I was good enough that I would have even been given that opportunity, because I think I'm better at what I do in business than I was at editing, which is why I like stories and TikToks, because they don't take a bunch of skill, And so I think that that's something people need to really recognize if they're really trying to build a healthy, successful career. But I also believe in learning and self-education. I love audiobooks. I've been getting more into podcasts. I definitely have started to do that more, but I love the editing and curation of a book and the process around learning. So I'm always reading, mostly nonfiction. And the topics are wide. Right now, I'm really into finances. And so I just read The Psychology of Money, which I thought was really, really interesting, because it's not like your typical, make a budget, put stuff in your 401k. It's about people's psychology of like why they spend money, what they spend money on, what their background in childhood was like, and how it makes them feel, and what kind of outcomes that yields, and not necessarily good or bad, just to understand, what money does as an asset for you. And so I thought that was really interesting. I'm really into health. I just read Outlive and understand like kind of all the different things that make you feel healthy, because as you get older, that gets harder. Fitness, anything around, business and marketing. I love memoirs, because just going back to the mentor question, maybe you don't have one-to-one access with the former CEO of Pepsi, or the CEO of Disney, but like you can read their books and you can kind of see what their challenges are. You can see what their mistakes were. You can see their mindset about how they wake up every morning and approach things. And it's something that you wouldn't know if you didn't read that book. And I can consume all that information, and I can pick, what are the best things that I think would help me, and I can learn from the things that they made mistakes on, so that I can maybe avoid them, or have them be less traumatic than they were for them. And I think that's a really big thing. I love AI. I mean, ChatGPT is really cool because, yes, like you have Google search, but a lot of times it's frustrating to return exactly what I'm trying to learn. I, upgraded to Pro one day, and I just the whole day was asking. I was taking pictures of my plants, and I'm like, why is this dead? What kind of plant is this? How much water does it need? Like, should this even be inside? Like, I mean, and it did that with everything. I do it with cooking, and just like building. I own a house now, and so it's like there's a million things to learn. And it's like, what even is this? Like, how does this work? And can I fix it myself? And I think that if you have a curiosity about anything, you can learn pretty much anything. You do have to be a little bit particular with your time if you want to become a skilled expert. But there's a difference between interest and a baseline understanding of something, and being a hireable subject matter expert on it.
Yeah.
So this is kind of funny because the last question we always ask people, it comes out of my interest on how other people have gotten to where they've gotten to. And you've kind of pointed across that to this entire conversation, even down to the whole reading people's memoirs, right? To see how they've gotten to certain places. So I think it's really funny that you've literally structured this entire conversation for this kind of crescendo of a question. And that usually comes down to, would Jenna at 12 years old think that you would be doing what you're doing today?
So I thought I was going to be an actress. My parents were buying me books about like how to move to LA, and how to be on the big screen, because honestly, growing up, like that's the only job that I saw representation visibly to me. It was the people on television. I was like, okay, I'm going to do that, because I didn't have the patience to be a teacher, and I didn't have the stomach to be a nurse. And an actress just seemed like it made sense for me, of the options that were likely available to me. And going to college like opened up the ability for me to be like, oh, there's lots of peoples that work on movies and TV. Like, I think I'm going to be a writer or an editor, and then from there, I got into the workforce, and you learn about jobs that I didn't know existed, like product managers, and I think that's going to continue to happen. So I always tell, young professionals, like, don't get too caught up in like pinpointing exactly what you want to do, because I still have no idea what my next job will be. Like, I didn't know I was going to be in this job. I didn't know I was going to be in the job before this, or the one before that. And so I love that. And I think I've had a very joyful career because of it. I would say that my mentality, an important mentality for people to be able to have the endurance to get to the tops of their careers and not burn out, which I'm not saying I've never burnt out. Like, I for sure have, and had to learn how to deal with that in a better way. But the one mentality I always have, and I try to teach people, is like, let's make new mistakes tomorrow. Like, as long as you're constantly learning from the thing that you did yesterday, and you're always working on being just 1% better, you're going to go really far over time. And so as long as you can keep that mentality, forgive yourself, and be committed to like learning and growth, I think, the sky's the limit.
Just purely being open to opportunities. I think that's what gets people to that point too, right? Like, as you even said yourself, like, you have this idea that destination is over here. You're like, I'm going to go there. And then you go through your career and you end up over here, and you're like, this is amazing. I thought I was going to be over there, but I just said yes to all these opportunities and was willing to do different things, which I think is a great, segue into the idea of like how you coach people and being an inspiration for other people. Like, that's great. Like, I'm sure there's a lot of people who look up to you in terms of what you're doing today.
Thank you. I just try to tell people, a lot of young people are like, I'm open to anything. I'll take any job, especially in tough markets. But I always tell them, pick something, choose something. Going back to marketing, Like, what is your personal brand? What are your intentions right now? People want to help people that have a dream, that have a focus. But if you're just saying, I'll do anything, people don't know how to help you. So pick something, go after whatever that goal is, learn a bunch about it, meet people, tell them what you're working on, what your intentions are. Because don't be afraid to change your mind. When you go to your next networking event, you could be saying something completely different and no one will know, and that's totally fine. You can update your resume tomorrow and be a completely different person. And to me, I think that is so exciting.
Oh, Jenna, that's so good. That's such good advice. Like, to close this out, that was good. It's like going to college. You just reinvent yourself. Like,
yeah, why not?
Literally, if you have a resume, you could change it in 2 hours and send it out to another company.
People do it all the time with their life. One day you're a single person and then you're married, and one day you're married and then you're a mom or dad. Like, you were never that before. You completely reinvented your life. Your career is the same way. Like, one day you didn't have a pet. Now you have to learn how to take care of a dog or a rabbit. Like, your career is the same thing. One day you're the head of marketing. Another day you're the head of product. The next day you're head of operations. And, the next day you're co-president. You have no idea. You have no idea what the years ahead have in store for you. And that should be thrilling.
Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Well, I want to thank you so much for taking the time talking with Steve and myself. If anyone, here's your plug. If anyone wants to find you, connect with you, where's the best place to do that?
I'd say LinkedIn, obviously Jenna Gaudio. You can find me on LinkedIn. My DMs are open, and I keep telling myself I'm going to post more of, my insights there. So maybe you connecting with me will be the inspiration that I need.
Perfect.
Do it.
Perfect. Well, Jenna, thank you so much again for joining us today. For everyone listening, I hope you enjoyed. This was a killer episode, and really appreciate your time. So until next time, we will talk to you soon. Thanks so much for listening. Feel free to reach out to us for all things marketing at attentiontrading.com.